Welcome to the FEI Icons podcast. Nobody becomes an icon by staying comfortable. These are the moments that stretch them and shape them. Real stories, real strategies, real leadership. The titles are public. The turning points were private. Until now.
I'm Heather Cole, finance leader, executive coach, and proud member of FEI. My goal is simple. Take the stories behind the titles and turn them into lessons you can use. If you've ever looked successful on paper but felt the weight of, am I doing this right? You're in the right place. Stories, strategy, leadership. Let's get into it. Have you ever wondered what it takes to keep a 100-year-old institution relevant in the world that changes faster than we can scroll? Today's conversation is a masterclass in leadership, resilience, and building the kind of relationships that quietly change everything. Welcome to the FEI Icons podcast. I'm Heather Cole, executive coach and strategic advisor, and today I'm joined by Brenda Zamzow, Chief Financial and Administrative Officer of the Girl Scouts of Greater Los Angeles. Brenda has spent more than 16 years running the business side of one of the most iconic youth organizations in the world, overseeing risk, finances, IT, people and culture, and facilities, all while helping Girl Scouts stay on mission, focused, and ready for the future. In this episode, Brenda shares what really keeps leaders like her up at night and how to turn finance says no into finance is our ally. She'll discuss how you can stay grounded when life stacks challenges on top of challenges. If you're leading teams, navigating change, and trying to stay relevant in a rapidly shifting world, you're going to take notes on this one. Brenda, welcome to our show. Share a little bit about yourself.
Great. Hey, Heather, thank you for having me today. I'm really looking forward to this. I've been Chief Financial Administrative Officer of Girl Scouts of Greater LA 16 years next month. Woo, I don't know how that happened. Time really flies when you're having fun. But basically, I run the business of Girl Scouts. So my job entails everything business related. I have a colleague who runs everything on the mission delivery side, which is everything dealing with our girls and our members and our iconic cookie program and all of those wonderful things. My job is to do finance and risk and IT, the people and culture team, and I also oversee all of our properties and facilities. So basically, I'm the business person behind the Girl Scouts here in Los Angeles. Prior to that, I was on a for-profit side. So this is my paid nonprofit job now. Prior to that, I started off in public accounting. Then I moved on to the entertainment industry and spent about 15 years there, mostly in the television production side of the business. And then I founded my own company, the Zamzow Group, which I ran for about 12 years before I came to the Girl Scouts.
Wow, quite a journey. I'm sure you have lots of learning lessons in there. Curious, if we looked at your life right now, the world is changing, and I can only imagine in helping young girls is kind of your mission. What's keeping you up at night?
Oh, my goodness. Well, the older I get, less keeps me up at night. So that's a lesson for the younger professionals listening to this today. It does get easier. Don't sweat the small stuff is what I like to say. What keeps me up at night and work related is how do we address the ever-changing, rapidly changing life of a girl, right? Pre-COVID, it was a whole lot easier, but COVID just threw a wrench into everything, and it has really changed so many of the things that girls have to deal with. Is social media being probably one of the biggest things. So we really refocused a lot of our programming on mental health and addressing mental health issues for girls. And it's on those same lines. It's, trying to maintain relevancy, right? The Girl Scouts, a blessing and a curse. We've been around for over 100 years. So some of those traditions and if any of you were Girl Scouts, don't worry, the traditions are all still there. However, we also really are working very, very hard to position our brand to ensure that everybody realizes that we are staying relevant and we are pivoting to shift to the changing ever changing, rapidly, changing lives of girls and what girls want and be today. And today was different than a year ago. And a year from now, it's going to be very different. So I think that's what keeps us up at night, is trying to just stay on top of everything and try to project what it's going to look like in the future so we can plan accordingly and have the right strategies in place.
No small task. I mean, I was just saying to someone earlier today, I wish I could hop in my time machine and go back to 1989. Now I am dating myself. But it just seems that life was so much simpler then, and able to not have to have the cell phone and, as you said, the social media influences. So curious, in your career, there's obviously been people that have been your role models, influencers, or people that guided you on the way. Maybe share a little bit about one of those people or one lesson that you learned from them.
Sure. So you mentioned 1989. So I'll date myself too. I graduated from college in 1984. And I went into public accounting. At that time, there were not a lot of female role models, especially now in my firm. And I think we had one female partner, and she was on the tax side. So I will say, for the first two really big jobs in my career, I had no mentors. I had no role models. I think everything was self-driven. I didn't have anybody to go to. I found someone later in life. In fact, when I first started working for Girl Scouts, the CEO here who recruited me in and convinced me to take this job and get out of the public side and go onto the for-profit side, she was the most influential. And she was a nonprofit executive, held very high positions at a lot of other companies, had a really big role here, and had been an executive coach before she came here. And I think because of that coaching expertise, I just learned a lot of things from her about how to react to situations and how to handle people better. She's famous for saying feedback is a gift, which I cringed and turned my nose up to for the first couple of times she said it. But now I say it to my staff with a smile, because I have learned feedback is really a gift. So I think that's one of the biggest takeaways that I learned from her, is asking people for feedback and being able to listen and receive it.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And I don't know about you, but when I first started getting feedback, my ego got in the way a little bit. And I was like, what? You mean I'm not perfect? So I think not just giving feedback, but the art of receiving feedback, right? And finding that balance where you're like, they're saying this to promote me, to help me.
Right, exactly. I think one of my vivid memories is maybe 8 or so years ago, we started doing surveys. We sent out an internal customer satisfaction survey on the finance team. And we were not ready to hear that. We were not ready to get those results, but we learned from it. We shifted, we listened, and, slowly but surely, I think we've really turned things around, and all of that negative feedback or suggestions for improvement, we've taken seriously. And, people now respect the team and reach out to them and want advice and want help and want handholding, and don't feel like we're just a compliance department. We're actually there to help them, support them, and promoting the mission. Let them do the mission work, and we do the behind the scenes.
Yeah, I'm curious, how do you get people on board with that? I hear a lot from CFOs that, the organization looks at them as the no people. The people that are like, no, you don't get that budget. What words of wisdom do you have for people that are trying to bridge those gaps and make different departments realize we're really your allies? We're not here to say no. We're here to promote the mission. It's their secret.
A lesson I learned early on when I got out of public accounting, I went to 20th Century Fox, and I was in their corporate audit department. And so our job was to do internal audit. So we would go into different departments, and ask them questions. And they always thought we were the spies for corporate, right? We're trying to catch them at something. And, it's a gotcha kind of game. And I think I learned then how to master the art of getting people to trust you and tell you things without you pointing a finger and, giving a perception you were going to get them in trouble. So I think when it comes to getting people on board with providing feedback and listening to the feedback, it's that same philosophy as we're there to help them make their jobs easier. We don't want to give them extra work. We here at Girl Scouts, we want to be able to let them focus on doing their job, and we'll take care of the stuff behind the scenes. So I think it's building trust, sending the message that you're there to support them and not criticize, point fingers, get them in trouble, that kind of thing.
Totally get it. Yeah, because especially coming up through audit, it's not like you're like, "Yay, the auditors are here." Like that. That's not a thing. So being able to kind of make them realize that you're not there just to catch them, right? You're just going to make sure that organizations
Make it better, make things better for the enterprise as a whole, right?
yeah.
Everybody has their part to play, and we're the part that has to play our part. And it's part of the whole big picture. And we have a job to do, just like you have a job to do. And I think you have to ask for people to respect that, you know.
Yeah, I like that. So if you were to look at your role in throughout your career, right? What is a decision that you're most proud of that others might not know you had to make? Maybe it was a pivotal decision in your life, maybe it was transition.
Well, I think that at the top, and there have been many, but I think at the top of the list was me taking the plunge to open my own business. I'd always worked for somebody else. And after, public accounting and, a long time in the entertainment industry, I went to work for a small consulting firm. And they made some really bad decisions with my agreement. I was not even a year into the job. They had asked me to open a new office here in LA for a company that was based in the Bay Area, very successful up there, but they'd never been able to get off the ground here in Los Angeles. And they recruited me to do business development and set up, the LA office of a contract consulting firm, hiring CFOs and controllers to do contract work. But this is back in like 2000, 2001. So it was not the big business that it is today. There were not a lot of the big firms doing that. And so we sort of had a little niche. And because I had spent my career not just working in finance, but also building a big network, I had the contacts. I have the Rolodex. There I go, dating myself once again. I had a lot of people. I was the person that people always called at holiday time. Do you have so-and-so's address? Do you keep in touch with people? I naturally was a connector and people person that connected a lot of things and a lot of people. So when I was working for this firm, they did not like the fact that I had such success in my first short year, not even year that I was there. And they wanted to renegotiate my contract mid-year because they thought I was going to make too much money. And, this was where the nice girls don't get the corner office shifted in my brain. And I'm like, no, let's have a discussion about that. And they weren't really willing to compromise. So I took the plunge. I said, you know what? Bye-bye. I can do this on my own. And I went out and bought a laptop and got a small little SBA loan from Bank of America. And I sent out cards announcing the introduction of the Zamzow Group to everybody that I knew and hung up my shingle. And I am happy to say within a couple of years of starting that, I was actually in the top women-owned businesses in Los Angeles, like 5 years in a row. So super proud of that. That was the biggest decision I ever made. But I will tell you a funny story about that. The first Friday that I did this, I realized I was not getting a direct deposit into my bank account. I no longer had a steady paycheck. I didn't have benefits. I literally hyperventilated. I was like, what did I do? But I got over it. Now, a couple hours later, I was back on track. And I don't think I looked back. I never looked back on that. I just like to tell that story because it's probably the once and only time I hyperventilated in my entire life. But I, had one freak out moment and then just didn't look back and then just charged forward. And I think that was just the transformative decision I made that sort of catapulted the rest of my career trajectory.
I love that story so much because I can relate. Similarly, I was working for a company and I doubled their business. They patted me on the back, said, good job. And I'm like, let's talk about compensation. And they're like, well, we're good. And I'm like, well, I'm not. And like you, I was like out the door. And then I went, oh, what'll I do? What can I afford? And I was like, I have a tent and I can afford dog food. And if I can't pay my mortgage, I can sell my house. I got this. But I get that fear, that adrenaline, but yet that like inspirational, like, I got this.
I got this, right? And I'm doing something for myself. I worked for the big companies and I was not a shareholder, so I hold a million in any of those companies. So I felt like I was busting my butt making other people rich. And it was, I got the entrepreneurial bug. What I didn't mention was in between the two entertainment companies I worked for, I worked for an internet startup during the dot-com boom. So for about a year and a half, I had visions because I did the business plan. We were going to be billionaires, right? But that is where I shifted from being formerly a finance person to really being looking at a company and becoming an entrepreneur, being involved in business development and in overseeing the marketing team and all of those things that I didn't have direct experience in before. And I think that really helped me when I started my own business because I am now transitioned out of just the finance and operations side.
So I'm amazed how many CFOs I run into that want to someday start their own company. So if you don't mind, I'm going to drill down on that a little bit more. What nuggets, like if you had a dear friend that has a finance background and says, I've always wanted to start my own thing, what lessons do you have for them?
Well, first of all, don't be afraid to take the risk. I think that's number one. Take the plunge. Even if you aren't 100% confident you can do it, try it, right? But I think the best pearl of wisdom I can share is that don't wait until it's time to do that. You have to be thinking about this and build up on it. And why I say that is one of my keys to success has been the contacts and relationships I've maintained over the years. So like I said earlier, I was that person that just kept my contacts and I just kept track of where everybody was. If I met somebody, they went into my contact. I had one of those machines where you could put business cards into it and it automatically updated your system. So I did that. And now we have LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is amazing. And as soon as I meet people, I zoom over and we share our LinkedIn profiles. And I actually take the time to add those people to my contact database as well. And I put notes in there. What do I remember about them? What stands out? What are things that I could help them with? Who can I connect them to? Things that will refresh my memory when I look back on who's that person. I can remember the date I met them, where I met them, and what that was. So one of the things, how did I build up those contacts early on in my career was something that I learned from my dad growing up. He was always a joiner, super involved in lots of different organizations. And so I think he inspired me to do the same. So, way back to younger days, I taught Sunday school. I sing in the church choir, and then I joined 4-H, and then I became the leader of the 4-H club. And then I joined this and I joined that. And then college, I joined the accounting society and PBL and all these other things. And did I just be a member? No, I was a committee chair, and then I was the president or that early involvement in all of these extracurricular activities, I think helped me when I first started working because I felt like I was much more well-rounded than just somebody who focused entirely on school. And then when I moved to LA, one thing I didn't mention about my background is I'm not a native Californian. I actually grew up in the Midwest on a dairy farm in Wisconsin and went to college there and was the first child in my family to go to college. My parents went to college. So I was very proud of that. And they were very proud of me for taking that because I could have easily fallen into what a lot of my high school friends did was just, they can go to college and, start their families really young and worked at the same place for 40 years and then retire. That's not the life that I had. That's not been my career journey. After college, I took a year in London, worked for FEI, worked for one of the big 8 accounting firms, and then I moved to Los Angeles, in the job with Ernst & Whinney. And when I came here, I didn't go to school with anyone here. All I knew were a few people that I worked with, but I didn't have family, friends, university, school, anything. So what did I do? I joined an organization, and that changed my life. I joined the Junior Chamber of Commerce, and I met all of these different people. And of course, I became committee chair, and then I became a vice president, and then I chaired this, and blah, blah, blah. And of course, next thing you know, I'm the board chair. So I think all of that helped me be much more of a well-rounded person. And I surrounded myself with what I'm going to say are really high quality people who cared about the community, people who were doing things with their own spare time to make the world a better place. And I think I knew a very long time ago that I would end up working in nonprofits someday because it's just in my DNA. I just knew that, yeah, it was all fine and dandy to get my early experience doing the things that I did because it made me who I am. But now I'm actually able to use all of that expertise that I've learned over the years and provide it to an organization that's doing such amazing things. And I'm just really, really proud of that. And when I put my head down at night, I can comfortably say, I did something today to make the world a better place. And I don't know if everybody can say that with an honest, straight face. So what pearl of wisdom do I have? Stay connected with people. Do the networking, do the things that have become so easy not to do. You know, during COVID, it became really easy for people to be secluded and in lockdown. I think we got very used to not leaving the house. And I think the virtual world has made it much easier for people to not interact with people in real life. And if I could share some advice to the listeners, I think getting back out there and doing some of the traditional things you cannot underestimate the importance of that. Building relationships in real life is so important. So grab coffee with people, have lunch with people, go get out of your home office for a lunch break. It'll do you a world of good and it will keep those connections going. And you never know when that person's going to come in handy down the road. Could be a future client, could be a future employee of yours, could be your new BFF. It could be, who knows what doors they can open for you. And you can't do that by not getting out and about.
There's so many nuggets that you just said. I want to back it up a little bit. Like, one of the things I grabbed onto was you said, surround yourself by high quality people. And I love that because who was it? Jim Rohn, I think, said you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time on, right? And it's so true. I actually go through an exercise. My husband and I, we look at our friend group, and I know that I'm going to get in trouble later. We kind of every year go, who's serving us? And how do we play at a different level? How do we help more people? What organizations do we get to get more involved in? And to do that well, you kind of have to decide what you're not going to do or who you're not going to spend time with. Would you agree?
Yes, I would agree. I think this is where I struggled for a long time because it meant I was being selfish, but selfish in a good way. I didn't just diss people and, write people off. I just wasn't as available. I just wasn't as available to those folks that maybe had run their course in our relationship and maybe it wasn't really going anywhere. And I think I have really tried to focus. In fact, I think one of my New Year's resolutions about 6 or 7 years ago was to go deeper in my relationships. Because I've mentioned this now multiple times today, is that I was known for this amazing list of contacts. I wanted a prize at a Girl Scout convention because out of 500 people there, I had the most connections on LinkedIn. Okay. But it's not necessarily a numbers game. It's the quality of those numbers. So I think what I really was focused on was digging deeper in some of those relationships and making sure I wasn't just a superficial friend or colleague to people, that I actually went deeper with them and very strategically tried to surround myself with people that not only could help advance me, give me, advice or be my trusted advisors on things, like good friends. And most importantly, how can I help them? Because I think something that's really a good message for people to hear is that it's not about what you get, it's about what you give. And when you give something, you get it back in multitudes. And I think that's some biblical thing. I'm not sure, don't quote me on that, but I think there's so much truth to the fact that you get back more than you give when you become a giver. And that's really important.
I love that. I like to think it's like a boomerang. If you go help people, it spins out there in the universe, growing in size. And when it does finally come back to you, it often comes back to 10x what you sent out.
Yes. And that's really key. That's a really good thing for people to keep in mind.
Yeah, like everybody should ask themselves, who are you helping today? Right? And what you said about connecting with people, I naturally am an introvert, believe it or not. I'm one of those people that was very comfortable during COVID because I could just hunker down. It was post COVID that was the challenge. Where you're like, whoa, I got to go out in the real world again. And one of the things that I've been doing is having virtual lunches with people that I've just always admired that I wish you could spend more time with. And we both have lunch. And sometimes I'm sitting outside or at a park and we have a virtual lunch together. And I think there's a lot of ways with technology, as much as it's causing us to go introverted, it can also help us see the people we really want to see.
Just want to make sure I don't send the message of virtual get togethers are not a thing to do because there's a lot of benefit in those. And you were very nice, Heather, on saying lunches, but happy hour is a really good thing to do as well.
Agreed. I'm ready for a happy hour anytime you guys want to have one.
Yeah, no, it's good. I do them weeknights and sometimes on weekends too with people that have maybe moved out of LA and are cross country now or whatever. But those kinds of things and keeping those relationships is really healthy for us because we all need online outside of work and yeah, getting opinions and listening to what other people are doing. And, trying to help them and you sharing your trials and tribulations if you have any. That's those relationships are just so important to all of us always.
Yes, yeah. I love it. So we had talked beforehand a little bit, and you had shared that you have a story of resiliency. And I don't want to miss it because I think, especially in the world today, it's so uncertain, so much craziness going on. I think the one thing that we all need is a little resiliency to be able to say, okay, I mean, what's Winston Churchill's expression? If you're going through hell, just keep going, right? Maybe you could share your story, Brenda.
I think it's important for people to hear what somebody else has gone through because it can maybe help you think that, okay, I'm not going to sweat whatever I'm dealing with right now. I'm going to get through it. So about 12 or 13 years ago, when I first came to Girl Scouts, I was a consultant because I still had my business going, but it was after the recession and the clients were coming from like they had been in previous years. So when things were starting to really taper off and I was getting a little worried there. So I probably honestly did lose some sleep at that time about what was the future of what was going on. But karma and staying connected is, really important. So I was contacted by the Girl Scouts because they needed somebody to come in and build a financial model for their strategic plan. They had a new 5-year strategic plan. They did not have a CFO on staff at the time, and they needed somebody with some expertise that could do that. And because I was involved as a board member of the Girl Scouts here in Los Angeles, back when I was working at the entertainment company, I knew the organization, at least what it looked like at that time. And so it was the perfect transition. So I said, sure. It was 2 days a week for 3 months. That was in April of 2010. And look at me now. I came in as a consultant and did consulting for the first couple of years. And then this is when 2013 happened. And there were a lot of things that happened during that year. Number one, I was going through a divorce. Number two, I found out that one of the consultants that worked for me embezzled from one of my clients, and the client was taking legal action against me. Number 3, I was losing my hearing. I wear 2 hearing aids now. I have a disease that most people haven't heard of called Meniere's disease. If you're interested, look it up. It's a horrible disease, but most people have never heard of it. But it involves sudden vertigo, hearing loss, tinnitus, just creates all kinds of anxiety and all kinds of stuff. And it's one of those silent diseases that you hear about because on the outside I look fine, but on the inside, it's not going on. So I was losing my hearing, and that was super stressful among all those other things that were going on. And then above all else, my mother was in her 11th year of Alzheimer's, and we were nearing the end. So imagine all of that happening simultaneously, right? So the CEO that I mentioned earlier also knew some of this was going on with me. At the same time that all of these things were happening on the outside, I discovered somebody embezzling from the Girl Scouts, one of our employees, the director level position. And that's a whole story and podcast in itself, Heather. But I had to work with the FBI undercover and try to catch the guy. We were doing this all on the
wire.
Didn't really wire, but almost, right? It was such a fascinating experience now that I look back on it, but it was so stressful at the time. And so this was happening at the same time that all of things were going on personally in my life. And after discovering the embezzlement, I finally was convinced, because Lisa was very persistent, we really need you to come on here full time. So I went back to earning a bi-weekly paycheck and getting benefits and paid vacation and all that. But it happened at the right time for me because I just needed some stability with everything. It was so my journey through all of that taught me that no challenge is too big to overcome. And boy, did I ever have to dig deep. But I had a lot of friends and a lot of people who supported me through that. So I didn't get through it alone. And, any one of those things could have been devastating and knock people off of their being. And I think I do have to credit my upbringing a lot with the strength, the value system that my parents taught me. And, there's nothing like teamwork when you're growing up on a dairy farm because friends and family and neighbors all come together to do stuff, right? So I learned the value of that really early on in my life. And so it wasn't something that I went through alone. I really leaned on people hard, and I'm so grateful for that. And, everybody came together, but I didn't lose my mind over it. I think I didn't know it at the time, but I was way more resilient than I thought I was. So that's sort of my story. If you're asking me what did I actually do to get over that, I think I didn't have an option. Failure was not an option for me. I was now on my own, right? And, I lived out here. I didn't have any family in here. So, there was a lot of digging deep, but I had been successful career-wise up until that point. And so nothing was going to knock me back. So I just said, yeah, I'm going through a dark, dark space and a dark time, but this too will pass. My mother's words, right?
So Brenda, thank you so much for sharing that story. I literally get goosebumps. You literally were like trauma stacking is what I'm going to call it. It was like one on top of another, and it all happened about the same time, which is crazy. I don't know about you, but I sometimes go, what is the universe trying to tell me at this point? Because I can't take anymore. But what you're telling me is the universe was telling you that you can, that you got it, that you are resilient and powerful. And I love that message. I love how you tied it back to Midwest, because as a Midwest girl myself from Minnesota, originally grew up in Chicago, I do believe there's something called Midwest values, and Midwest values are part of that. We get through it.
It's true. This is where I'll admit I have bias, but there is something about that, and I meet people from Minnesota or Illinois or where we start talking funny and bring back our accents and,
Well, yeah.
but oh geez, and oh, all that kind of funny stuff. But I don't know, there's something a little different about it. I think I even gravitated to surrounding myself with some Midwesterners when I first moved out here too. And they're still my friends of, 30 plus years out here too.
I love it. Well, your story is so inspiring. I wanted to give you an opportunity to just share one more nugget to our listeners that you're like, hey, this is what I'm looking at, or this is what I want to leave you with today. What would be your nugget?
There are so many, and I think I've shared, the importance of relationships and building relationships and being involved in the community. I think those are really important. Failure's not an option. That's another thing. This is small, and it might be old school, but I think this is what sets people apart from others. I spoke to an MBA class at Cal State LA in January, and I shared with the students this story, and it resonated with some of them. And I actually got a letter in the mail last week.
A handwritten letter, mind you. Love it.
A handwritten letter. I have been on a mission to communicate with people that you cannot underestimate the value of a handwritten thank you note. Emails and texts are so easy, and they're a lazy way to show your gratitude. And I have actually, even when I had my business, I had a blog, and I did a blog about the lost art of a handwritten thank you note. So I've been talking about this for years, but it may seem really small, but don't you love getting a letter in the mail? All we get is junk mail now. You don't even get bills in the mail anymore. You just get junk. How wonderful is it to see a card with your name written on it with a stamp and a return address, right? And somebody took the time to show you that they cared about what you did for them. And I have a whole stack of all kinds of different boxes of, personalized stationery. And that is just a tidbit that I want to leave people with. Take 5 minutes and write a thank you note to somebody. If they took you to a nice lunch, or they just did something that went a little out of their way, show your gratitude back, because that, again, will come back to you tenfold. And I shared that with that MBA class, and I got 2 notes in the mail. And this student sat down and wrote a big long lower, and I want to frame it because it means so much to me. He heard what I said, and he said what I talked about, my resiliency story and things. He said it came at the right time. He needed to hear that because he was also going through a really rough spot in his life, and he needed to hear that there were options for him, and things will get better. Maybe not too profound, but something really tangible that can change your life.
Some of the best things are the most simplest things. So, Brenda, I really appreciate your time today. You're doing such great work. The girls of today and tomorrow need you in your organization because it is a crazy world out there. I honor you, and I thank you for joining us on our podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, everyone, for your time and listening to what I had to say. So I appreciate it. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day, and search me out on LinkedIn if you want to have a direct connection. I'd love to chat.
Definitely. Before you go, here are the big takeaways I got from Brenda's story. Staying relevant is a discipline, not a one-time strategy. Finance earns trust by partnering, not policing. Resilience is practiced through people, perspective, and persistence. Your challenge this week? Write 1 handwritten thank you note, schedule 1 relationship building conversation, and ask 1 person for candid, honest feedback. Thanks for listening to the FEI Icons podcast. I'm Heather Cole, and we'll see you next time.
Your career doesn't grow in isolation. It grows in rooms, relationships, and real conversations. So here's your next move. Expand your network through the FEI network, because the right connections increase your net worth and your impact. Plug into the programs, the people, and the community, and keep showing up until opportunity recognizes your name.